everyone. Today we're going to be talking about how do we divide a decimal by a decimal. Earlier we learned that when there is a decimal in the dividend, which is right here, all we have to do is bring it up into our quotient and then we can divide as normal. Today we're going to talk about what happens if we have a decimal that's in our divisor and in some cases also in our dividend. What do we have to do? Let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing you need to know is when we're dividing a decimal by another decimal, what we're going to do is we're going to multiply both the divisor and the dividend by a power of 10. When we multiply by a power of 10, essentially all we're doing is moving the decimal point. This sounds very complicated and confusing, so let's go ahead and practice using this example below. Now, we did talk previously that the first number is always your dividend. So this is the number that's going to go inside the long division sign. So off to the side here, I'm going to write it as a true long division sign or problem. So I'm going to divide 6.826 divided by 0.002. Now, as we stated before, I'm not too concerned if there's a decimal in the dividend. However, I'm not pleased that there's a decimal in the divisor. So in order to get rid of this decimal point, you can't just erase the decimal and the zeros. That would be too easy. What we're going to do is we're going to multiply by a power of 10. So essentially, all we're going to be doing is moving this decimal point 3 spaces to the right so that it's behind the 2. So if I move it 1, 2, 3 spaces to the right, it ends up behind the 2. And we know that when the decimal point is behind a number, that just essentially means it turns into a whole number. Whatever you do to your divisor, you must also do to your dividend. So I multiplied and moved this decimal point 3 spaces to the right. So we're going to do the same thing here. I'm going to move it 1, 2, 3 spaces to the right. And in fact, my decimal point now moves back here behind the 6. So this actually becomes a whole number as well. Please do not try and divide with these arrows and the moving of the decimal points. I strongly encourage you to rewrite the problem. So now my new divisor is just a 2. All those zeros and the decimal point goes away because I've moved it 3 spaces to the right. I'm also going to move my decimal point inside my dividend, which then becomes just a 6,826. And then from there, we just do our basic long division. 2 fits into 6 3 whole times. 3 times 2 is 6. When I subtract, I get 0. When I check, 0 is less than 2, so I'm happy. Let's go ahead and bring down that 8. 2 goes into 8 4 whole times. 4 times 2 is 8. When I subtract, I get a 0 once again, which is good because that's still less than my divisor, 2. I can go ahead and bring down my next number, which is 2. 2 goes into 2 1 whole time. 1 times 2 is 2. Once again, get a 0 remainder, which keeps happening, which is less than 2. And then our very last step is bring down that final number, which is 6. 2 goes into 6 3 whole times. And 2 times 3 is 6. So once again, I get a remainder of 0, which is less than 2. And there's nothing else to bring down. My final answer is 3,413. We don't need to place a decimal point back in because we multiplied by 1,000 to move the decimal behind our whole numbers. So this is our final answer. Okay, let's go ahead and try another one. All right, this one is, I love this example because this is a common mistake kids make. They automatically look at this problem and say, oh, the answer's 2. Please don't flip this in your mind. This is not 24 divided by 12. Don't flip it that way. It's actually 12 divided by 2.4. So once again, this first number is always going to be your dividend. So the 12 actually goes inside the long division sign, and 2.4 becomes our divisor. Now, first step, we need to get rid of this decimal point. And I know in order to do that, I have to move the decimal 1 space so that it's behind the 4. Whatever you do to your divisor, you must also do to your dividend. However, there is no decimal point in 12. Hopefully we remember that a decimal point is always located behind a number when it's not given. So if I move this one space to the right, I have to move this one space to the right. You're going to place a 0 in that empty spot. Okay, I strongly encourage you to rewrite the problem. So my new divisor is just 24. And my dividend actually becomes 120 because I moved that decimal point one space to the right. Okay, now I can divide as normal. 24 cannot fit into 1, and in fact, 24 can't even fit into 12. It's too small. 24 can fit into 120. I'm thinking 5 times, but let me just double check off to the side here. So times 5, let's see if I'm right. 4 times 5 is 20. 5 times 2 is 10, plus 2 is 12. So I do get 120. So 5 times 24 is 120, which then gives me a remainder of 0. So my final answer is 5. I hope that this is a good review of just dividing regular whole numbers. We will see in a second, though, we won't always get rid of the decimal point in our dividend. Sometimes it will remain there, and that's okay. All right, let's go ahead and try another example. So this one, we have this first number is our dividend. So we have 0.028 divided by 0.5. All right, what I'm going to start by doing, I have to get rid of the decimal point in the divisor. We don't want to leave that as a decimal. In order to do that, I have to move it one space to the right so it goes behind the 5. If you move the decimal one space here, that means we have to move this decimal one space to the right as well, which means your new decimal point is in front of that too. Let's go ahead and rewrite this problem. So since I moved it one space, this just becomes a 5 as my divisor. And my dividend, you are welcome to write both zeros. However, that's not necessary. I'm just going to put 1 0. I have a decimal point, and then 28 since I moved it just one space to the right. Now, before I can start dividing, hopefully this is a review for you guys. When there is a decimal still in the dividend, make sure you bring it up into your quotient before you start doing any long division, just so that you don't forget it in your answer. 5 fits into 0 times. 5 fits into 2, still 0 times because 2 is too small. 5 fits into 28, 5 whole times. 5 times 5 is 25. When we subtract, I get 3. When I check, 3 is less than 5, so I'm happy. However, I have a remainder of 3 and I don't have anything else to bring down. We do not leave this as a remainder 3. We don't do that, okay? Also, a common mistake kids make is they think that they can just take this remainder and pop it up into our quotient. That is incorrect as well. What you need to do in this situation is we can add a 0 into our dividend, bring it straight down, and then we can finish our division. So we have 5 goes into 30, 6 whole times. 6 times 5 is 30 to finish out our problem with a remainder of 0. So our final answer is 0.056.